Welcome back to another episode of the Lender Podcast. I'm Bryce Matheson, and as always, this episode is brought to you by Lender. Lender is a loan management software tool designed to help you with every aspect of your business, from origination to servicing to payoff. Lender helps you with document generation, helps you with collecting monthly payments, dispersing monthly payments to your investors, taking in new loan applications, giving your borrowers a portal that they can log into, giving your investors a portal that they can log into. Pretty much every aspect of everything that you do inside of your lending business can be done and facilitated through Lender. You can check that out by going to joinlender.com. That's LENDR, joinlender.com. Now, on to the episode. Hey everyone, the audio that you're about to hear is actually a recording from one of the events that I was a panelist on at the Paper Trail conference from just a couple weeks ago. And I do apologize in advance for the audio. It's not great just because it was recorded on my phone. And then I took the audio and ran it through a audio enhancer to kind of improve it. It did help a little bit, but some of the voices still turned out to be a little bit robotic. For example, I was on the far end, and so Devon, who was just to my right, his audio is pretty good. But when they were asking questions to the audience, and especially some of the panelists on the very far end of me, it sounds a little like tinny and robotic. So the content is really, really good. I apologize in advance for the audio, but I feel like if you can, kind of sit tight and just push through, I promise that the content is super good. We go over everything, like as far as like getting into private lending, just if you're starting out. We talk about capital strategies and structures, building investor trust and relationships, challenges with deal flow and trying to like minimize kind of those hills and valleys. And then also we kind of talk about passive income and how I just don't really believe in it. So again, all I have to say, content is superb. It's exceptional. I think you'll pick out a lot of things by listening to it, but just give me some grace on the audio.
You're just like, cool, I want to keep repeating it. Actually, the more you talk about it amongst your peers and your colleagues, and people are like, oh, tell me more about that. Can I place my money with you? And then you're just like, sweet, I can actually make some more. And then the one common thing that ties all of us up here in this panel is that we started passively and then we decided to do it actively with other people's capital, and it just grew out of control. To the point where a couple months ago, I ended up having to take like an urgent, immediate sabbatical because I was just so stressed out and overwhelmed, and there's near to zero passivity in it. So we wanted to have this conversation in front and with all of you so that you can hear the different discussions, the different considerations that we all have both internally and together, because we have to constantly seek other private lending business owners and note investor business owners their counsel. How do you handle the deal flow that's in front of you? And there's a lot of it out there right now. How do you simultaneously raise more capital if you need to help fund said deals, or should you not? And then how do you handle all the different policies, systems, processes? Should you hire somebody who, to what capacity, or try to just keep it as a company of what, right? And probably all of you had some kind of consideration on how big you want to grow. And it's kind of a moving target, if you will. So hopefully we'll be able to have some really thorough discussion here and encourage all of you to have some engagement in some things that might be thinking about in terms of scaling your business. But we'll start off by having each one of my peers and friends, I'm fortunate to call them friends, to talk about, introduce themselves, their lending business, what market they operate or markets they operate in, and a little bit about their origin story of how they became a private lender and how item worked into a few other things too, particularly for Bryce on the end there. But we'll start with Michael first.
So when I was a little boy, oh, we're going way down. It's not that long, but it's contextual, okay? So when I was a kid, I didn't know any entrepreneurs, and I was scared to death. I knew I had to have a job so I could earn money, and I didn't want to ever lose a job. Oh my gosh. The good news is I found an awesome job, and I was a corporate and securities attorney in New York City on Wall Street for a number of years, and it was heady stuff. My clients were the front page of the Wall Street Journal. It was awesome. But one day when I was sitting in probably Bora Bora or something on my very few vacations, I thought, dang, I love my job, but you know what would be more fun is to manage my own investments. And so what eventually ended up happening is I learned about private lending. I started lending. We lend in Texas. We love the market. It's not for everybody, but we love the market, mostly in Houston. And now we're a 3-person firm. And that's my origin story. Started from the very beginning.
What's up, guys? My name is Devon Kennard. My background is actually playing in the NFL. I played 9 years in the NFL, retired couple years ago now, 2023, so 2 years ago. And the reason why I got into real estate and lending, I'm a second generation NFL player. My dad played as well. And I just knew football was going to end. So I wanted to figure out a way to make money out off the field. And real estate seemed like a great choice. So I started buying single family properties. Towards the end of my career, I was buying turnkey stuff in the Midwest. And towards the end of my career, things weren't cash flowing as well when I was looking at buying deals. And I'm like, to reach my financial goals that I had after retirement, like buying properties wasn't going to give me a good enough return. And I built a good community of people I knew, and a few people asked me if I would lend them capital. So I tried it. And, yesterday you guys were on the jockey versus the horse conversation. And I started out just a jockey guy. I had no idea what I was doing in the lending space. They created the loan package for me. I was a lender. Like the best thing I did was I was a good judgment of character in who I did business with, and they were good operators, and I got paid back. They were second position loans, unsecured. I didn't even know what secured versus unsecured was at the time. But like I said, I chose a good jockey, made really good money on it, got my capital back. And then I was like, oh, this is pretty nice. So as soon as I retired, I read Lend to Live. So that's how I met Beth and Matt. So she was my mentor before she knew she was my mentor. And then I made her become my actual mentor. And now I call her and her husband friends of mine. So that's awesome. And I lend primarily here in Arizona. And I'm growing my business I want to get to about 50 million is my long-term goal. And I'm going to reach about 10 million this year. So that's kind of where I'm at.
I'm Bryce Matheson. So originally, we've been in real estate probably 10-ish years now. We got started right as I was graduating college, mostly out of desperation. My first big boy job out of school was making 40 grand a year. And I was like, I don't have a lot of money, and I heard real estate's the way to do it. So we started buying rental properties, and we did that for 6 or 7 years. And then after a while, we kind of just got tired of being landlords. And so we decided to move into flipping. And so we liked that a lot better because I would get into the construction phase of everything. I really enjoyed the project management aspect of that. And then my wife would love the wallpaper and the accent walls and the paint colors and the decorations and making it cutesy and stuff like that. So we did that for a number of years. And for whatever reason, we liked that because, I don't know, mentally it didn't weigh as heavy as the rentals. For whatever reason, I was just I've got 45 water heaters and 45 roofs, and it was just the mental load. Even with the property manager was I don't love this. So for whatever reason, moving over to flipping just catered to our lifestyle a little bit better. Then around COVID timeframe, we had a project that went south, and just about everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong. It took us about 14 months to exit that project. I remember at one point, the property was completely renovated except for baseboard. I could not find baseboard anywhere. I was calling people 8 hours all around me. I will drive with a trailer and pick up a baseboard. I just got to get this project done. So anyway, we had a painter who stole 10 grand from us. It was just a project from hell. It was a nightmare. When it was all said and done, we lost about 50,000 on that project. And at the end of the day, I was looking at the settlement statement, and our hard money lender made about 25 grand and we lost 50. And I had months of sleepless nights, and he probably didn't have any idea what was going on. So I was like, you know what? Maybe I'm on the wrong side of this, and I should become the bank instead. And so that was kind of our foray into private lending. And so about 2022, we did it kind of part-time. We started dabbling in it. And then beginning of 2023, we went full-time. And that kind of spun off into, in addition to running our own private lending company, my professional background is in tech, and my career is in tech. I worked for the Department of Homeland Security for about a decade. And so seeing the software space in the private lending space not being great, we decided to do a spinoff of that, and we started Lender, which is a loan management tool for private hard money lenders. And so we do that in tandem with running our own lending company. I actually live here locally in Arizona, but we lend exclusively in the state of Idaho. So kind of random, but anyway, that's not quite as long the origin story as Michael, since I was a baby, but anyway, that's kind of us in a nutshell. So from start to finish, so we run our own lending company in tandem, and then we also do the software. And that kind of brings us to today.
So let me ask each one of you, tell us a little bit about your capital stat, whose capital you use, because it sounds like you use a blend of your own and maybe other people, and then a little bit about your business model. How do you originate loans, and how do you utilize investor capital?
Should I start?
Sure.
So about 50% of the money we lend out is our firms. The other 50% is our investors. What we do is, I'll just give you a couple data points of how we do it because it could be long. So one thing that we do is, I mentioned this in the other panel, like our special sauce is we only lend to people that we've lent to before, and we have a stable of people that keep coming back to us, which is terrific. And then we lend by recommendation. That's part of our strategy. As we grow, that won't always be possible, but that's solid where we are. When we have someone new who came in recommended, we have a Zoom call with them. Hopefully we meet them when we're in Houston where we lend. And then we look for humility. We make them give us $1,000, which we will credit them when we close, because we find our first time someone comes in, they're talking to other people, which is totally fine. But if we're going to spend a lot of time with them, we need to know they're going to stick with us. And we credit it at closing. Another thing that we do that might be distinct, and we consistently consider and reconsider, is, if I have an investor, the investor is the most important people in my life other than, my significant others. That's what I like to say. So
Investor meaning those that invest capital.
excuse me. Yeah, the people who are giving me money are the most important people in my life. So what I do, which is unusual and which may be stupid, but what I feel like I want to give them a good ride. So if I have a loan and they need a loan, I'm going to earn so much more money if it's on my cash, right? Because I don't earn that much money from the investors. I take a little bit, but I put them in it, and sometimes will not have my own money working because I want to keep them. I want to give them a ride. I want them to make money. I want them to be happy. I want them to keep coming back. I want to tell their friends, and they're smart enough to know. I'm going to say, I'm going to give you X% annually. They're smart enough to know that if there are 2 weeks, a month, 2 months where they're not getting a return, that they're not getting that percent annually, right? So that's something we do in terms of our cash management, which, we don't always do it, but we often do.
Well, and before we move on to Devon, I want to point out something that is important that you mentioned yesterday and today. You only work with borrowers that you already had an existing relationship. Obviously, you can't do that when you're first starting out, right? The point is that he uses his own capital, and I just can't express this enough because I hear so many private lenders coming in and immediately wanting to use other people's capital, but they don't know anything about the act of note investing or private lending, and they're trying to figure it out with somebody else's dollars, which can be really, really dangerous, right? And so you really started out on your own and then brought people in once you refined and understood your policies, your practices, and so
For several years. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, Damon?
Yeah, I use primarily my own capital as well. I do take on investor capital, but I feel like that's been a strength of mine with, being a former player. I use the capital that I made while I was playing to deploy into the real estate deals. But also, since I have a portfolio of properties, I've also leveraged that. I have line of credits. So, I essentially arbitrage that. My lines on my properties are at 7. I'm charging 12 and a point here locally. So, I make that spread on my line of credit. So, but I still consider that my capital. I'm the PG on my lines and it's my properties. So that's majority. And then I do have investors, but I feel the more that I invest my own capital, I think some people miss that because you make the most money that way. Like, you don't have to pay anyone else. So it's not only a business, but it's an investment vehicle. So as I look at my entire investment portfolio, I've invested in properties myself. I've invested in a lot of syndications, and I look over, the performance, and nothing can beat what I can do inside of my lending company because my loans turn over 2 to 3 times a year. So I'm really annualizing mid-teen returns. And if that's on my personal capital, I can get a 15, let's call it percent cash on cash return on my capital annually. So I'm a huge proponent of running my business, not only as a business, but as my own investment vehicle. And then that makes me more confident going to investors because I can be like, hey, I obviously really believe in what I'm doing. I'm putting my own money into majority of my business. And, I would love for you to join this journey with me. So that's kind of been my strength in being able to raise capital. And I'll kind of do that in tandem with my own capital as I keep growing.
Yeah, I was going to say, we run a very, very similar structure. I'd say probably 30% of the capital we deploy is our own money. When we first got started, and I think probably everybody feels this way, is like, say you've got $500,000 or $1 million of your own capital that you're trying to lend out, you realize how fast that goes. And so you're like, okay, what's the next easiest thing? And I don't really have a great network, so I'm going to go and try and get lines of credit or whatever. And we tried to do that. We started to go down that road. And then I just honestly, I got really tired of jumping through the hoops and all the different things that the banks and stuff would make you do. For example, we found a bank would give us a line of credit, but they're like, we issue the draws, and before you do that, we have to have this, 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 and this. And on top of that, you have to have this document filled out. Oh, and you have to notarize it. And I'm like, you know what? No, like this is just way too complicated. And then pretty soon you come to find out that like, yeah, you call yourself a lender, but you're not really a lender because you don't call the shots. And so we kind of said, you know what? We'll figure something else out. And so we've just now exclusively, we have no lines of credit. We have our own capital and investor capital. And I love it. I love having full autonomy with the funds and knowing that like, look, this is a good deal. This is a great deal. Regardless of what you say or what you think, we have the option to deploy on this or not. And I think we'll stick with that. At this point in time, we have no plans to raise institutional capital just because this model works so well for us.
Operate using a fund, right?
I do, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to jump in there. So with the line of credits, like for me, it's my line of credits are on my actual real estate, so I don't have to go through those hoops.
I was wondering, like, how do you get a line for 7%? I need to know.
Yeah.
But so it's based on the portfolio that I already have. Now, I'm in conversation. So if you want to get a line of credit just based on your book of business, I'm in conversations with local banks. That's where you have to go, and I'm negotiating. Came to one, and they want to give me a lot of restrictions, and I said no. That's completely changing my business model. I'm in talk with one here locally who may let me run my business as I operate, but just at a lower LTV. And I'm like, all right, if my loan book is, $10 million and you'll give me a line of credit for 40% of that, $4 million, I'll take that if you have no control over my, book of business or making me get an appraisal or some of those things. So we'll see if that plays out, but it's harder to get a line of credit based on the actual loan portfolio.
Just for a hot minute, because you don't operate a fund, right? And you said you very carefully chose to just cap it at 15 billion to have in capital to deploy. Tell us a little bit about your chosen business strategy. Like, how do you place your clients' capital? Because you do it a little bit differently than the other two, and you typically employ like a note-on-note, a hypothecation.
Yeah. So how I raise, and I've actually used Kevin Kim to help me with this, but how I raise is they lend money to my actual business. So 42 Solutions is my lending company, and my investors lend to 42 Solutions, and it's an unsecured note. So that's what I tell them transparently. It's unsecured, but you have to understand, I can show you my whole book of loans. There's personal guarantees, the LTV, my average LTV, right, loan to after repair value at least is 65%. So I show them my book of loans. I'm not going to personally secure the loan to you because the business has secured loans. And I haven't had any pushback with that, to be honest with you. I'm like, look, I'm investing my own capital in this. The business has loans, personal guarantees through every deal that we do, and they lend to the business. Now, the responsibility that takes on me, which makes me feel very, very careful with everything that I do, is I owe them that 10% regardless. So I pay my investors 10%. So, if you were doing a whole note or a fractional note and they're on a direct loan, that borrower stops paying, then you don't have to pay your investors, right? Well, for me, I'm taking the responsibility that I'm going to pay my investors regardless. So that makes me very intentional with the loans that I do, the borrowers that I work with, and the LTV that I'm at, because I'm going to be footing a bill to my investors if my borrower stops paying, whether they're paying or not. But for me, that's a risk that I'm willing to take in that. And how I manage that is I keep a good amount of liquidity. Like, I try to make sure I have cash reserves to handle some defaults where I might still have to pay my investors. And I like that model. It's a lot easier.
And it's important to note, though, because now you're originating all these loans under 42 Solutions that you cannot go and pledge those as collateral for a line of credit if you're directly placing other clients. So yesterday you talked about how At and I started our business in private placement. So we would put investors directly on the deed of trust or mortgage, and we would act essentially as the broker, right? We were originating the loan on their behalf. But because of that, nothing was really an asset in our name. We did not have a portfolio. Even though the investors kept repeatedly investing with us year over year, I mean, none of it was considered a part of family lending. So I think it's it's difficult to do that too, to convince others to be able to invest in your business that way, but you pledged a guarantee, right? Which not all originators will do. The one in Canada that I talked about yesterday that went into receivership, she honestly didn't. And then they're all jockeying position, and we get paid first on that hypothecation.
Yeah. So I'll expand just a little bit. So the things you have to do if anybody wants to raise capital that way, to do it correctly, you still need to file Reg D, and you still want to have your blue sky state. I thought that was intimidating, but working with Kevin, it cost me a couple grand, and it wasn't really that bad. So every year I have to refile. But and honestly, all it is a loan agreement and the promissory note, and then accredited attestation to prove that they're an accredited investor. Those are the 3 documents I have right now. I'm working on strengthening those with Kevin a little more. But I found it was a much easier way to raise capital, and because my mindset isn't I need to go and raise 50 million, I don't really want to have to go the fund route. So if I can continue to raise that way, I'm going to raise until I raise it that way until I hit a roadblock, and maybe I'll reconsider at that point. But it's worth this more.
If I may, this, like I said, this is really fascinating because basically you have a fund without having a fund. You're giving them a personal guarantee de facto. They don't have the hard asset. That's the only negative. But it's nice for you because you have the cash sitting there and you don't have to say, okay, do you want this loan? Do you want this loan? Because it's lent to you.
So there's less communication I have to do. I think
That's really nice.
yeah.
But guarantee it. You're personally guaranteed.
Yeah, I'm going to pay them regardless. So it's risking that. But, I think there's give and take. When you do a fund, you have to worry about all the compliance with that. And that becomes a huge extra expense that I don't really have to deal with right now. So there's give and take.
I think you'll find too, if you do go the fund route, it's just like you said, like, oh, I was really intimidated initially by the blue sky laws and all that stuff. And then once you do it, you're like, it really wasn't that bad. But one thing I do like about the fund model is, and I think you'll find in private lending, there's always this like teeter-totter seesaw of like too much money, not enough loans, or too many loans and not enough money. That never goes away, ever, period. But one thing that I did find is inside of the funds model, I had less of that. For example, prior to having the fund, obviously we did direct placement. And the issue we had is I'd have a borrower who come to us and say, hey, can you fund this loan? And I said, I think so, maybe. And then you go and talk to your investors and you said, hey, can you fund this loan? And they say, yes, I can. And then you say, okay, this is the closing date, wire funds to title, do this. And then the day of, they would say, oh, I'm sorry, I bought a boat. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Because exactly, it reflects poorly on who? You. And they're having the time of their life sailing away on their boat. And we got tired of that. So like I said, the seesaw teeter-totter never goes away. But I liked having, again, it comes back to autonomy and saying, when a borrower comes to me and says, hey, I have a deal on the line, $250,000 loan, can you fund it? I say yes or no, and guaranteed they can depend on me knowing that the funds will be there because I control all of them.
Yeah, when we went to a fund too, I thought I was streamlining operations, and then I didn't have to go dial for dollars like you said. And we've had investors back out too, and you're like, crap, now what do I do? And the fund, you're basically just exchanging some problems for new problems, right? And we'll discuss this more.
I prefer those problems still, but that's one man's opinion.
Arguably, I agree with you. Michael, you do a completely different model too.
There's a couple questions here.
Sorry, I just wanted to go back a couple was said earlier. So you are pooling investor funds. You're taking on the loans, but it's not a one investor to one loan.
So all my investors are lending money to my company.
Correct. Like works out in a shape covered that you're not pledging any of the assets of the loan. Yeah. So they are coming to you saying, hey, I'm going to lend you $250,000. You could take that and spread it across both loans.
I can do it. Once I get it, I can do what I want with it as please.
So it's a weird in between, in my mind, ground between like a straight allocation model where it's 1-to-1, one asset's like investor.
Because they're still investors. So it was a gray area that I just chose. I'm going to do Reg D, go by the books. But it was like some people have raised this way and haven't filed Reg D or in Blue Sky. But I wanted to be above board as much as possible. So I just do it. And it wasn't that expensive. So, but
You're right. It's not straight up hypothecation. But originally when you first started, I thought you did some note on notes and then switched it. Said that this is too complicated. And you guys have to remember that like Devon comes from a very niche community of pro athletes where he was able to really insert himself and say, hey, I'm doing this. I know that my trajectory, there's some endpoint to my professional career, and there will be for you too. Let's find, other pathways to help generate passive income for you. I can help you. So predominantly your capital comes from people within that community that already have a really significant amount of trust in him. Doesn't hurt that he also wrote a book
about passive investing. I published it on Bigger Pockets, and then now you're part of a community as well, pro athlete community.
Yeah, I'm on the board. So I'm in front. All my investors are athletes, and like, I mean, that's kind of my niche of being able to raise money from them. So it's an advantage I have. And that's probably why I think, because, I'm sure some of you are like, you getting your investors to get, give you money unsecured, like, sounds crazy. But, I think they just trust me, and I'm able to build off of that.
So, Michael, tell us a little bit about your business model, how you handle that.
So I do what Beth and Matt did for many years before they decided to do a fund. And that is that I match make borrowers with investors, and I help my investors make money funding those deals. And often I'll put my own money into those deals as well. So we talked about how that can be difficult and a lot of work, because you need to call one and say, do you want to put it in? And are you sure you're not going to go buy a boat? Because if you buy a boat, it's reputational risk for me. I already told these borrowers that they're going to get the money. So this is the way I mitigate that, is I say most of my investors, they want to have their money continually going. And at some point, they know that the proper, I'll give it the little property review. I have a picture place. I'll tell them about the borrower. I have, I explain so they have a good sense, and I give them a link so they can look at any document they want. It's 100, and you know me, I'll explain anything for hours if they want. But eventually they feel comfortable enough with it that I just ask them, do you want to go into something else? And then I put them into something else. So it is matchmaking, but it's not as hard as I think some people operate it, because my investors want to keep their money working, and that's what we do for them. And we're not just always, giving the money back. We'll give the money back if they want it for the boat or whatever. One guy bought a piece of land with 5 lakes on it, and he only needed $150,000 from us. But yeah, our investors, I might be repeating myself, but our investors stick with it, so we don't have to do a lot of, you want to do this.
Performance-based trust, right?
Yeah, they just want to let it ride, right?
One thing I was going to say, one way to kind of that we found to kind of get rid of those hills and valleys is we would, and this is very very common in the traditional mortgage lending world, is you will have a warehouse line of credit where you will fund it on the warehouse line and then sell it off to a secondary market, right? You can kind of do a pseudo warehouse line with your own capital where you fund the project entirely yourself, and then you kind of backfill it with an assignment and sell it off to the investors that way. You can run into issues with securities and carving up that note and fractionalized notes. And again, there's ways to get around that. But that was one way that we found to mitigate, is that we would fund it entirely ourselves. And then if an investor came in 30 days, 60 days later and say, hey, do you have any deals that I can potentially put some money into? And say, yeah, sure, take a shared interest in this note.
That's exactly what we do.
Oh, perfect.
Exactly what we do. I'll have a loan. I've already funded it. Someone needs a loan. I'll give it to them.
The nice thing about the private placement model that I always say is that you can't bring Nate off it, right? Like, I'm placing you on that capital. That was a very easy way to grow capital when I didn't have an established reputation a decade ago, and I didn't have really a dedicated community that I could reach out to. I didn't have that many fancy friends back then, and so I had to let it just kind of grow naturally. And so if I could avoid any aspect of having the money transact through us, just made it that much more simplified. Question.
Anybody can answer this, but curious, if you guys have in your fund model or in your private placement, the investments are cash flowing. Do you have an arrangement with your investors where that money, that cash flow, is invested right back into your fund, so it's redeployed monthly, quarterly, etc.?
We do. We have an option to either take quarterly distributions or to reinvest. That was 65% of our investors choose to reinvest, which at this point in time where we're sitting on a stack of cash, I'm like, be nice if you took distributions. It's while my AUM to grow. That's a good problem to have, but it's like, oh, I wasn't really anticipating that. So for us, there's a reinvest option.
We always pay our investors every 10th of the month. They get their interest, and then they get a nice report explaining to them what happened and confirming everything. But just recently, a friend of mine who wanted us to take over his IRA, he just obviously can't take money get sent to him personally. So we just started doing where we're gonna keep investing his money as it grows. So I think we're doing both of this part.
I do both as well. They have the option. I found a lot of my investors, they just want the payments, but I have a handful that want it to compound, and I send them a monthly statement. So how I do it, I pay my investor. I get paid on the first. I charge all my borrowers on the first. Make sure that's processed with accounting. Pay my investors on the 15th, and they get a statement the following first from the previous month. And whether they got the distribution or it just compounded, it will reflect that.
Yep. Very, very similar. I'd say probably 80% of our investors choose to just reinvest and not take distributions, which we're definitely not as big as Beth or some other people up here. And so I personally like it because, say you have $10 million in your fund and 80% of them choose to reinvest 10%, like your fund can grow. Yeah, exactly. You can afford the boat. But then, your fund does grow by $1 million a year if everybody chooses to reinvest. So there are pros and cons, obviously, if you get to a certain threshold where you can't maintain that. But I was surprised by that too. I thought more of our investors would want regular distributions. They're like, nah, just let it ride.
Is there a question over here?
Yeah, quick question for Luan. Sorry if this was already answered, you're a little late, but I shouldn't have 506B or C.
I'm not. I have investors and they lend money to my business. So I'm doing an unsecured loan to my business, and that's how I raise. I did have to file Reg D and Blue Sky to be above board, but it wasn't like I didn't have to file an official 506.
Have you seen any additional oversight check-ins? Anybody since you did that?
No, I did that with Kevin Kim, set it up. Every year I have to refile, and then it's been smooth besides that. I just make sure all my investors, they complete an accredited attestation letter that Kevin wrote up for me to where it's showing they're accredited and they have to attest to that, a loan agreement and a promissory note. And that's my package now. Working with him, we might expand on it just to strengthen it a little bit. But as of now, that's my investor package.
Do you fractionalize some funds or is it easy to pull out?
So when they lend to the business, they give me the capital and I deploy as I please. I have done some more participation agreements. I have a couple people who wanted to do it that way, and it's fine, but it's, I found they want to get into the weeds more, and then they don't really know. Like, it's been way more work. I'm like, I don't mind like showing you everything, but then they don't really know. So it ends up being more questions than anything, and I'm like, geez, like compared to, I guess, the fund or even what I'm doing, it's easier. You don't have as many questions along the way. Like, I show them what the LTVs are on the properties, how things are performing. But the couple of participation agreements I've done, I've had to get into the weeds with people, and it's just they didn't really know what they were talking about, and I'm like, geez. So I felt like I was having to take them from ground zero all the way up.
I have a question for Brady. So I understand that your clients are coming to you, giving them a promissory note, say, I'm a promise to do all these wonderful things. How come you don't say, well, how about this? Maybe I have this loan, I just funded it. Why not doing a launch or an assignment? I saw you that loan. And I think you said you guarantee your clients 10%. Mm-hmm. Let's say the note's 12%. Why would you just assign them the deed, and then you just take that 2% spread, and then what you're doing is recapturing all your capital, so you should be investing back to do more.
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially, in my mind, it's essentially the same thing. It works out the same way.
Because you're lending at 12.
Yeah, I'm lending at 12 and 1, and then my average loan length is about 7 months. So I'm turning money every twice a year. So at least, if not faster. So yeah, I'm gonna say it's kind of the same thing happens. Like they lend me the money. What I like is it's evergreen. So in my agreement, if they ever want their money back, they got to notify me, and I have 6 months to pay them back. So that's how it is within my agreement, because I didn't want to instantly have liquidity issues. So you want your money back, let me know. If I have it available, I'll get it to you. But I need the 6 months just in case all the money's deployed. I'll let you know. I'll get you what I can. But within 6 months, I'll be able to pay your loan back.
Are there installments? I mean, because somebody wants to give you $1 million, that feels really heavy to have to get back in 6 months if they say.
Yeah, so in that case, I haven't had a huge one like that, but I've talked with Kevin, and in that case, I'll probably do installments. But most of mine, if one investor's investing under 300, I'm in Arizona, the loan amounts are larger. So my average loan size is almost $500,000, to where I'm like, if I have 6 months and you reach out to me, I'll be able to pay that back in 6 months. And I keep mindful that I keep enough reserves. I'm on the conservative side, and because I'm guaranteeing I'm going to pay my investors, I make sure I have enough cash reserves to handle payments and any liquidity. So, but the assignment and assigning it, that's something I definitely could do. It seems like a little more work than what I'm doing. If I can just get them to lend me the money and and I know I'm going to have their money until they say so. It's kind of nice.
Any more questions?
What's yours? Sure. No, there's not.
It's evergreen, so there's no end date. It's just So that's why it's kind of, you mentioned it's kind of like a fund without having a fund.
Yeah.
It really is. Like they're signing an evergreen loan to my company, and they could exit at any point. Let me know.
And with the notes that you guys, Lardahes is to everybody, do you originate any of those directly with borrowers, or do you just get assignments for like private money no estate deals, or how do you get deal flow, I guess?
Good question. Talk deal flow. So I think all of us are originators, right?
Yeah.
Have you buying? Will you repeat the question? Oh, the question was, how do we get our notes? So are we originating them? Are we buying them? Where do we source our deals?
And what are the deals? Like, are they real estate, the bridge loans, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And what type of deals are they?
Okay, so we're not note buyers or sellers. I mean, we may do that, but we're private lenders, and then we originate all of that. I originate all of our notes all day long. And for me, I mean, I've learned more about note buying and selling, and I think you guys are magic because you buy things based on people you don't know and properties you can't get into. And I know that I know that there are people who completely disagree because that's your beautiful world, right? And for my beautiful world, I get to meet the people, I get to go into the property, and I get to underwrite it. Darn sure I can top jar and say, well, what about this? What's your experience? The county says it's this, but you said it was that. So we underwrite it.
Us as well, very similar fashion. We've got a whole marketing engine for Google ads and Facebook and Meta ads and drumming out business. And note buying to me is actually very foreign. Because we originate all of our own notes. So this conference has been very eye-opening. But I'm very polarized on the opposite side. I like originating it just because, like Michael said, like I can bet the borrower. And on top of that, in addition to the servicing spread and the note income, we also get the origination points, fees, extension fees like that. And so it really does bolster your returns significantly. I mean, rather than I think they were saying average 9 to 10% on a note, like Devon said, we can sometimes yield 15, 18, 20% depending on what happens over the life of the loan. And again, like Devon said as well, it's an investment vehicle for us because we do have investor capital. We take a yield spread on that, but we do have a good portion of our own funds invested. And so that's all just gravy on top of it. So we'll take it.
And like you said, bridge loans. I think most of us do bridge loans. The short term, which really mitigates the risk, as opposed to buying longer.
We hate terms.
Like if
we want it all to be done in less than a year.
Like when interest rates were going up several years ago, I called my guys and said, "Listen, I'm not extending. You lower your price and sell that prop because we didn't know it was going to happen." Right?
Good to be clear, there's nothing passive about what we do anymore, to be honest with you, right? There lies the challenges because we started off passively investing our own capital. Sweet, I can go on a trip for 3 weeks or, take off here. I don't have to deploy my capital if I don't want to. I can buy that boat, which we did, and then be done with it. Then all of a sudden you keep growing it, investing other people's capital, and it becomes very active.
Passive income is bullshit. I don't believe it anymore. I don't. I think it's a facade. It's not a thing.
So let's talk a little bit about deal flow then. How do you, and balancing act. I think that sourcing deals right now is probably a bigger problem than it is to try and find capital. Tell me if you agree with that or disagree.
I would definitely agree. I think for me, I found most of my deal flow by just boots on the ground, going to networking events, reaching out. Like, if you guys don't build out your email list, I wish I did that a long time ago. But so what I did is I started finding people in the market that I want to lend in. So that's Arizona. And I would find somebody who was real estate investing and look through everyone he's following and go to every page. And I was literally, a lot of real estate professionals had their email in their Instagram, for instance, and I'm taking their email and adding it to my email list that I'll send out, weekly emails to. And I started with just 1 or 2 people, and within the last year and a half, I'm at nearly 900 people on my email list that hear from me every Wednesday at 8 a.m. So that's kind of my marketing play. And then I try to go to real estate meetups when I hear about them. And then some of my borrowers, they started having reveal parties. So instead of
that on Facebook.
Yeah. So instead of like broker opens, which is just for like agents essentially, so it feels more official, they'll have reveal parties. And if it's a nicer property, now they're inviting anyone to come who's in the real estate industry, agents, wholesalers, it doesn't matter, other fix and flippers. So I'll go there, and the last 2 or 3 I've had, I picked up 1 or 2 borrowers, and it's turned into meaningful business for me. So I feel like it's kind of the compound effect of combining things like that. And then all of a sudden you're like, you get one deal a month and you're lucky. And then all of a sudden that starts to pick up. So you just got to stay consistent. But that's been my model.
I would say usually when you start out, everyone's like, man, borrowers are the easy part. If only I had $10 million in capital, I could just do deals all day long. And then pretty soon you start to realize like you get a couple deals under your belt and it's not like capital is the easy part, which I know just some people think is hard to believe, but it really is the deals. Because honestly, deals are a dime a dozen, but a good deal is the really hard thing to find. We have people in our network who legitimately get 1,000 loan applications per month and they maybe accept 100, or less. And so it really is about the volume. And then you could just kind of pick the cream of the crop and get whatever you want. Like I said, we have a whole marketing engine. So email list is great. We do some outbound ads. On top of that, I'd say if you don't obviously have a website or a Google My Business page, like I'm always surprised when people don't have a Google business page. We get a lot of traffic from that. So RIAs, I think it's all the above. It's not just one marketing channel. It's all of them.
I kind of cheat. I never wanted to pay for ads, and the idea of like a funnel and having a newsletter felt daunting to me. Even could write a book, but I can't write an email. But I was just cheap and did it all through Facebook. Like I called it value add content marketing or toppable authority, but really just putting some valued content out there. I mean, it's similar to what you would do in a growing email list, but it was really when I wanted to and what I wanted to talk about, and I didn't have to be put on a schedule. But it was a little bit slower growing for our reputation to build and for the deals to come in. When I didn't have a good deal, I made sure that I always worked with a local hard money lender that would basically, if he had a pulse in a property, they would fund it. We do auction properties. And so if it didn't fit our lending criteria, we would broker it over to them for a referral fee or a point broker fee and be done with it. But that way I didn't ever have to say no to someone if I didn't have capital. And it's worked really well for us over the years where we were really brokering probably 20% of our volume was broker loans that just didn't fit our criteria and didn't require us to increase our risk levels.
I actually have a question for you on that because I've looked into that and I brokered one loan, but with that, I'm afraid I'm spawning off my potential future business because the guys who, at least in our market, who will maybe be more aggressive, their terms are cheaper. So I say no because I don't like the deal. And then I send them to the cheaper lender that I know and they're charging them 10. And I'm like, they tell me they're not going to steal my client, but I don't know. I get like worried about that. So how do you guys manage that?
So the guys that will fund a pulse in a property, we may not ever like that borrower, right? They just always want high leverage, but they have the pulse in the property lender. They're charging high 3 and 12 always, right? And they only give significant discounts if you're doing like 20 plus deals a year and have an established relationship with them. We worked with other lenders locally that we had really good relationships with and some inherent trust, where we would pass deals over to the fix to them, and then they would give us their seconds, and we would, provide them with some referral fees too. So I don't want them to steal our business, but I was confident enough in that relationship. So I only have to hear one, and we'll never do business with them again, right? That they don't want to lose the referral sources, that they know that we can't fund those high leverage deals, or especially when we were younger and growing, we couldn't really fund the burst because we didn't have enough capital. So even if we loved the deal, if it was over $500,000, that was really in excess of our average deal size. Early on, our average deal size was like 175, maybe when we started off, because we were constrained by the investors that had capital to place with us, and they may have only had $250,000 or something like that. We didn't have that many 7-figure investors, and so they would get that added deal flow from us too. And we would help underwrite some of it, or collect a lot of the processing. Low processing for them before we shipped it over.
I just wanted to comment, not a question, but when we were talking about marketing and Beth said she's cheap and I'm cheaper than Beth, they spent literally zero. I don't have a website. I don't want 1,000 applications and to let people I lend. So I go to RIA meetings. I don't tell people I lend, but I do want to get the good people. So it was something Tibon said that reminded me of a lot of counties will have deeds recorded. And I don't know if I work in a lot of counties because I work in the Kansas City area, and I will go in and my good borrowers, I will look at what other lenders they use, and then I will backtrack and look who those lenders are lending to. and then I can find the borrowers that I want based on, and you can look them up and you can see like background check for whatever you want to see if they're deadbeats. And but if the good lenders are doing multiple deals with those people, and then I can pursue the people that I want rather than having to wade through 1,000 applications.
So, Pyra, you're saying that you can actually go into the county registry of deeds and look it up by lender.
So some counties, not every county you can see, but some counties I can do a search like on my borrower, and then I can see what other lenders they're using regularly, and then I can backtrack on those lenders and see what borrowers they have.
Depending,
Disclosure.
yeah, depending on the state too. So there's no sale.
Disclosure states. And she's in the Missouri side of Kansas City. In Missouri, it's county by county. There's certain counties that are non-disclosure, like a county that St. Louis is in, you can't find hardly any. What most title companies can give you some bar lists and stuff like that. It's not a matter of public record.
Yeah.
Well, frustrating when you go to the state of Texas and you try like, wow, this neighborhood's beautiful. I want to see what prices cost, and everything has dash.
So that's okay. So that's what I was wondering. You should not disclose. You can see the assignments in Texas, got right. You can't see the sell price.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, but all I need to do is
that's I was gonna say that's your things.
And we can, Jackson County, we could see everything, which is a kiss. And my husband does baking, and he's got access to some things too, where I can go in on the Kansas side and also find not everything that I want, but I can find a lot of stuff that way. It's a little harder.
What do you do? Hit them with direct mail, or how do you find borrower up that stuff?
Well, and you have to remember, like, we're not talking about 30 people. We're talking about 3. So I look them up on Facebook. I see where they're going to be. Do they go to RIAs? And I show up.
One theme here too is people are talking about, like being cheap. So we do use Google and Facebook ads. I would say like, don't be afraid of it. Like I think it's cheap relative to a deal. Like we spend $25 a day. So like, I don't know, what does that work out to you? $1,500 a month or something? Like in the grand scheme of thing, if you do a deal and you make 10 grand over the life of the loan, like relative, it's relatively cheap. So if you are shying away from paid ads, I wouldn't. It's not as scary as people make it seem.
So let's switch gears a little bit about size. And I know this is probably controversial because you can't just pick a number, but like how many loans or how much volume can you do by yourself? Because now Michael and I both have staff, right? And I don't think you do, Bryce, and I know you don't, DeBong, right? Besides working with a family and an M, like how many? What's your volume constraints where you feel like I just can't do this anymore? Where you really need to like outsource some of it.
In my opinion, once you get to a decent amount of volume, if you can get a software system like Lender, you can crank out a lot of business even on your own. For me right now, I have an executive assistant and then a marketing girl that helps me with like content on social and my newsletter, and then my bookkeeper, and that's kind of my squad. I would say if you get a good software system, you can kind of crush it.
I know I'm probably biased on this, but
You're totally biased.
I'm 100% biased, 100% biased. Because granted, the software is expensive, but relative to a full-time employee, it's relatively inexpensive. And there's a lot of things that it does and automates. For example, one thing that I hated doing in Excel with just me, myself, and my spreadsheet was like keeping track of like insurance expiration. Just like it's one of those things that like you have to do that nobody wants to do. Like, okay, we got this loan. Do I have to check insurance, make sure it doesn't expire, and property taxes and all that kind of stuff. So for example, one thing we do is when a borrower uploads their proof of insurance document, AI goes out and scans that. It pulls out the expiration date on the policy and just tracks it for you. So like, I don't even have to think about it because it'll alert me and the borrower say, hey, your insurance is coming up in 30 days. And it's saved me multiple times. So things like that is just the menial tasks that you don't have to pay a VA or a full-time employee to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were up to like 45 loans on our portfolio annually. So like doing around 40 to 50 loans in volume, which isn't a ton each month, but manually tracking on a spreadsheet. And we started back in 2014. So the problem with the lending software back then was that every lending software was owned by somebody who'd never been a private lender before. The software sucked. And for every private lender notebester out there, we had a different way of doing business. And so you can't really, it's harder to hard code software to a very nuanced business where my practice of taking fees off the top gross loan amount and netting it out is different from the next private lender who would give you that gross loan amount and make you pay for your fees out of pocket versus Buy is going to do interest reserves as a separate amount, but I just debit prepaid interest. So software really sucked over a decade ago. And what I love about Bryce is that they started out as private lenders, saw this gap in the market, and then created software that was designed by private lenders for private lenders. And I'm not like touting your software or anything like that, but it's, if I had that decision 10 years ago, we probably would have cycled through a whole bunch of staff. I would have just bucked up the $1,000 to pay for software rather than hiring people that were not very reliable and didn't know that I had to train on our business. But I didn't have that option then than we have now, some better options with lender. Because a lot of these other ones were really meant for private lenders that are basically hard money lenders that are and institutional lenders that are masquerading around as private lenders because that's what they want to call that industry now.
Do they have a servicing software component to them too?
Yes, origination and servicing. So I pull my payments from my borrowers within the software every month. Couple of clicks, payments are pooled.
Yeah, no
We use
everything.
total dedicated servicing software, but
Well, that's
we got our own
that's my
area else.
The goal is really to have it be like start to finish, like everything from the loan intake, the loan application to underwriting, collecting the documents, generating the documents, assigning the investors to it, moving it over to servicing, collecting the monthly payments, generating statements, collecting the pay. Yeah, like literally start to finish, and then recycle and do another one.
We just changed over a year ago to a new loan servicing software on what we were using because it was archaic, but I'd love to see you.
Yeah, let's chat.
They were all archaic, and it was really, really challenging. Was the only way to, in my opinion, and you guys can weigh into the difficulty about scaling is that as a private lender and you're managing other people's capital, you have to generate new business. So you need to be a sales and marketing strategist. You then need to be an investor relations person. You then need to be a portfolio manager. You need to be an underwriter. Like how you do all of that in one day, right? And so instead of maybe hiring somebody, although you can now leverage VAs and AI, which weren't available 10 years ago, and the software sucked. But the best thing to do is be able to streamline and automate your application process for those that are originating loans, right? From borrowers. If you're buying notes, then that's not necessary. And then managing the collection of documentation that you are requesting from the borrower inside a portal, right? Rather than having it flood your email. And I've had borrowers send me each document one at a time.
Or worse, by text. So they send the comps over through text. Can you please email this?
And over there's 20 pictures and I had uploaded. So the great thing about these is that you then have the ability to just drag and drop these documents up there. And if you do end up using a VA or an admin, then it helps remind them these are the standard documents that I'm going to require for ACTI. I can augment them and say I'm going to need these few extra because this is a commercial property instead of a resi, but it standardizes the process. So you don't have to keep rethinking or retraining and retooling your systems. And then there's an auto doc generation consideration for these where you can actually send email communication. So I can send canned email communication that drives the fields out, like insert borrower name here, insert loan amount here, insert maturity date here. And so it creates these email templates and these document templates, which can be really, really, really helpful and streamline your process. And then the servicing is just completely next level. Because a decade ago, you had to work with a bank, right? Produce a notcha file, and that systems had the capability to extract that from your loan origination software and then set it over to the bank. It was just a lot of it was really rudimentary. And now you have this automated ACH debit and credit, which is fantastic, that never existed when we first started. Tell us a little bit about the service.
So the servicing that allow you to escrow taxes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. If you want to, like Beth was saying, so there's we still have a lot of people who use notcha files because they prefer to do that. So if you want to, the system does generate a notcha file, and then it's basically just a text file that you upload to your bank, and then the payments will process through your local credit union or whatever. And that's some way to sidestep some of the ACH fees. In my opinion, the ACH fees are very nominal. I mean, it's like $1.50 per transaction. So for example, when you're in the origination side of things, it will say, okay, this is my loan amount. It gives you the proposed payment schedule. You basically just look it over, say, yep, looks good. You say service, and then on that schedule, it'll draft the payments automatically via ACH, and then it just deposits it into your bank account. And then it'll also in turn say, okay, out of this $1,000 payment, I owe my investor $833.33 this month, and then you can ACH that out to your investors as well. Same way.
And investor payments.
Nice.
So you could set that all up in one, because I know with us, we have a receivable for the borrower and a payable to our investor. So they're actually two different bones in the system. But you're saying that puts everything into one.
Correct. Yeah. So like I said, so let's easy numbers. Say you have a $100,000 loan, 12% note rate. Your payments would be $1,000 a month. So those $1,000 every month get deposited into your bank account, and then the system will say, okay, you pay your investors 10%. So you owe them $833.33, and you can also say, for example, like say you have an investor that has $50,000 in this loan and $30,000 in this loan and $20,000 in this loan, and from this loan they earned $300. This one they earned $200. This one they earned $100, and so it'll just send out a consolidated payment of $600 to investor John Smith for all three of their loans.
Is there a limit in your software of the payment amount?
Of the payment out to like,
I have one with my software. I have a borrower who has to pay $20,000 a month. It's a bigger loan, but it doesn't do it within the software.
the limit is $25,000 in a single debit, but there's like a split function, and so we just say split. So like, for example, we have one lender in the system who they did like a $2.5 million loan, and the monthly payments are like $30-something thousand, and so they just click the split button and it does 15 and 15.
Sounds pretty good, right? Any other questions for anybody? Yeah.
Yeah, so just on a macro level, as far as kind of an initial desktop analysis, pre-qual, you get a lead come in, we got some looking at first as far as just like potential borrower liquidity, deal, first price versus after repair value versus as is value. What's kind of like the first just few things you look at just to quickly vet a deal? And then how many are you guys seeing that versus coming in you'll actually close into a loan?
I'll start. So even though it's about the horse and it's about the line, I'll start with the jockey. I'll say, how much money do you have to put into this deal? Because that question is going to save you so much job. You can talk for half an hour about them and their cousin and how they've done it. How much money do you have to put in this deal?
What if they say happen?
No deal. Together, no deal. Sometimes they'll act like their grandpa and say, the way to start in real estate without any money is to start wholesale. No, but I ask them how much money they have to put in the deal. But how much experience do you have? And then once I have a sense, and then what's the deal? Because my goal is to find the good ones, of course, but also not to waste my time. Even though I love chatting with people, initially that's how I got them.
So if you get 100 leads in a month, like calls, females, potential deals coming in.
That would be these guys, because I only work with people that I've worked with before and by recommendation. And so I'm really lucky. Eventually I'll be having that question, but for right now, I don't.
I think Bryce and Devon would agree to me. This is the reason that it's important to have a software that takes in the application rather than just having your cell number to call, because that way you can screen them out, right? I just don't have enough time to answer all the.
One thing I was going to say is on our website, we have like a fake, I shouldn't call it fake. It's like, we call it our preliminary loan application. And so it doesn't do anything other than just send me an email, and it will say like, what's the purchase price? What's the address? Like, what's your annual income? Like, just, there's like maybe 8 questions on it. And we will get a lot of people who said, hey, do you guys do payday loans? Or like, hey, I can't pay my rent this month. And so that saves me a lot of time, because I can just quickly, like, I have a template set up in Gmail. So like, it comes in, I hit reply, I choose my, sorry, this doesn't work for us template, and then I'm done in literally 5 seconds. Whereas if it comes in and there's meat on the bones and it's like, okay, this is a solid one, then I'll get them on the phone and say, how much cash do you have on hand? Give me a little more detail. And then if it works out, then I will send them access to the full application. That's like, let me see some pictures, let me see some comps, let me see this to justify the price. And then we'll start the underwriting process and go that way.
For me, I have A, B, and C borrower list. My A list is like people I've kind of pre-approved. It's kind of like how he says he only likes to do those. If I can do all my business with just my A list, that's what I really want. So But if it's somebody new coming in, I want to hop on the phone and see if this is somebody I can be potentially adding to my A list. Who've they worked with before? How much capital do they have? How much experience do they have? So that's kind of getting a feel for them over the phone. Oh, a couple of questions go a long way. Like, how long have you been doing this? How many projects have you done? How many have you done this year? How much capital do you usually put down on your deals? That gives me a sense. And then once I know they're on my A list, then I'm kind of, okay, let's go. Let's really look at, put in the loan app on this deal specifically. Let me look at it. But that's kind of how I build it out. And when I know I have like at the end of this month, I have like 1.5 million coming back. So I'm already starting to prep, and I'm really targeting my A list, because if I can just get that capital back out to my A list, but then I have like my B and C list to where my capital is ever, I have other people I can reach out to that maybe I haven't worked with before, or maybe their credit wasn't as high. Like, there's different reasons why they might not be on my A list yet.
So will you let the actual deal criteria go outside of your rigid box a little bit for your A list? So, as far as going 70% of ARV or...
Yeah. So I like to be my full loan amount under 70% of the ARV, but I'll bend that some for my experienced borrowers. I really, really value cash on hand. Like, if they have capital in the bank and have that they have access to it, if they're putting somebody down and I know they have capital, when problems hit, they're going to have solutions to those problems. It's the people where they're barely going to be able to scrape by, capital wise with the payments. They're saying they're waiting on this deal to close, and that kind of is a pretty strong yellow flag to me, to where I'm like, if they hit difficulty, they don't have enough capital source to solve problems. So even if they are a good person, even if they have experience, maybe they have too many deals out, and I look at their bank statements and the loan sizes here are bigger, so they only have a few $1,000s in their bank account, and it's big. Like, so that's something I like to look at a lot, is cash availability. So that gives me a good telltale right there.
What I'm pointing at, that you did a really good job early on in making this a business with systems, right? But again, a lot of us just started by accident, and so your deal criteria, your lead scoring it's all in your head, right? But Devon's like, I know I'm going to scale this, so I'm going to create systems now. So he had a borrower documentation checklist. He has a scoring system in his head. It took us like 5 years before we started analyzing our deals. Every time we brought in a new stat, we keep training them with this tribal knowledge instead to have like an ABCD scorecard. Essentially like a good, better, best, right? Documenting your lender guidelines or your buy box to really define what is good, better, best. Good for me is like, I'll still do mobile home parks. It's a little bit of a stretch, right? Better is I'll do, small commercial multifamily, but best for us is 1 to 4 unit, right? For an asset class. Borrower, I'll still do the same thing. What's good, better, best, cash on hand, best, with a portfolio, right? Maybe good is just a flipper because they operate it like an active business and they're bidding on that income. So defining what your good, better, best is and really evaluating your criteria early on meant that Devon can scale without a lot of headaches. Because a lot of times you hear private lenders is, it depends. And we really got to put pen to paper and make sure that we don't have that conversation with ourselves all the time or our staff, that we can really weed out the borrowers quickly on that.
I think one thing you'll find too is like, and I'm not the best at it, but you get a feel for your borrowers, obviously. But one thing that we do is we track the initial ARV to what the deal actually sold and closed at. And you can see that discrepancy. And you can see like this borrower is consistently like 20% over. And so I just know like any deal that comes in, I'm going to take a 20% 20% is probably aggressive, but maybe 10 to 12% like haircut on their initial values, because I know they are always overvalued. Well, we've got one borrower who like sometimes quite literally anything that he wants, we will give him because he is so conservative. He is like, I will not lose money. And I'm like, dude, this is like a $200,000 property that you're valuing at like 130. I'm like, come on, you can like give a little, and I'm like coaxing him, which is usually the opposite, so you'll get a feel for people. And then based on that, if you want to, you can have like a fancy adjustment, rubric if you want to. I don't think most people are that crazy, but you'll get a feel for it really fast.
Software definitely helps you run analytics on your business much faster than a stupid spreadsheet like you did for 3 years.
Do you wanna come work for us? You're a great spokesperson. You're like, Beth, you're talking us out. I love it.
I was one of the few in the private lending world a decade ago that actually understood systems because I did enterprise system implementation in my corporate life. So I really understood the different, like what kind of business requirements were necessary, right? And how did that translate into technical specifications? Like it was very specific, but the software providers a decade ago, they were dealing with a lot of people, lenders who just really didn't know. They weren't really technically inclined, so they could sell the software and deal with the churn. They didn't care. Clients came through and left, because they were charging $20,000 just for an implementation fee back then. So we do have a lot more solutions that are a lot more elegant now and a lot more financially accessible than we ever did have before. I mean, it's not like a plug for you guys. For you, and it's done a great job of really filling a gap in the market that allows private lenders and investors to scale much more streamlined than we ever had before. We struggled a lot. I've gone through 4 sets of different staffing solutions to try and fit our need, and it's never stuck. I kind of consider myself a pretty damn good leader, but I mean, I guess that could be argued, but software just made it, and AI, right? So like highly recommend you guys to attend those 2 sessions tomorrow because we've been able to learn AI along with having the software applications, and you guys can weigh in on how you use that, but custom GPTs and ChatGPT and just a little bit of knowledge and education on that have streamlined everything for my staff, where I have this loan coach that's built with my documented lending criteria, right? That's built with different roles for a senior underwriter, a commercial appraiser, a title officer, all these different things in there. And so I can have my team plug in an email inquiry or a loan app into there and just say, tell me what missing information I have, tell me what risks I have, and give me a little summary. Because sometimes you get these big, long emails, inquiry, like, I don't really want to read all this. So it distills it out for you. And that has been kind of a game changer for my staff, too. What about you guys?
I use GPT for my title review. So I hired an attorney to review all my title for my first year and a half of business, and I compiled all the emails of feedback that I got on every title report. I had it summarized and created a GPT with that built out a criteria of what my standard title work should look like and have. The attorney I was using was charging me $500, so that's $500 I don't got, but also speed. Sometimes it would take them a while to get the title work back, so to have that pretty much instantaneous. If there's ever any gray area, I of course go to the actual attorney, but if it's vanilla property for the most part, I have enough data from the attorney that I used to review all my title that I feel comfortable with it. So that's one way I've used it that saves me $500 per loan and a lot of time.
Bryce, what about you with AI or?
Yeah, I mean, all the above. I don't know that I have too much more to add. My own personal opinion is people think AI is synonymous with ChatGPT, and there's a lot more to it than that. There are different models that are trained on things differently, and they're better for some versus the other. So for example, I typically think of ChatGPT as like B2C, like ChatGPT wants to be your best friend because it has a memory. And it's like, oh, I remember when you told me this thing, and like, here's your personal like to-do list kind of a thing. Whereas we use Claude very heavily. I feel like Claude is very B2B. It's very like analytical, very business minded in my opinion. And so we use that very heavily.
The AI produces better content too.
I agree.
I think if you haven't do content writing.
Yeah, I'll like all the above. So I would say probably branch out. Like there's Llama 3. I mean, there's like hundreds of different models that you can play with. So I would say don't silo yourself to just ChatGPT.
Any other questions out there? I mean, like how many of you really considering or trying to scale right now? What's the biggest challenge that you have in your business? And
all your horror stories from the last 2 days.
I know, I was even a Debbie Downer, right? And I don't really mean to be that way, but I just want to make sure that we really understand the inherent risks out there, and you can find a way to plow through that and overcome those risks. You're just in a much better position. And you'll stick around longer, right? Like Jay on the panel and Tracy and Fred, they've been around for decades, and there's a reason that they did that. And I think that's easy to start. So a lot of people started in this up economy in 2016, 2017, 2018. There's a lot of truly private lenders and no investors coming onto the market, but you could not lose. I actually back then could care less how much like cash on. I mean, I cared a little bit about how much cash on hand that they had. But when we're appreciating double digits in our markets, it didn't really matter. Nobody could lose. Now people can lose. Even hard money lenders and private lenders can lose. So it's really important to call those out. But
one thing you can do, I mean, we all went through this process. I started with Beth a long time ago. But one of the things you can do is just go to these things, and maybe now's not the time that you put your money in, but just keep advancing the knowledge, because right now it's kind of unsecure anyway. And that might be an idea, is just now's the learning time.
There's one thing that Kevin Kim talked about in the session at the end of the day yesterday, which I feel like there's a lot of doom and gloom, and a lot of people are talking about, like, with fund management, there's all these like things that you have to like adhere to and compliance, and like it does get overwhelming, and I agree. But at the very end of the session, they said, by the way, this is all really scary, but we love funds, and 90% of the time it's great and everything goes well. And I would say we do have this kind of like overarching like doom and gloom cloud of like, hey, we've had this horror story and this thing went wrong, and like we have all these like battle stories and wounds that have just come from like being in the trenches and doing all these loans. But there's a reason we're still in it. Like, I love it. It's afforded a killer lifestyle for me and my family. I would say, yeah, we've learned a lot, but also like 95% of the time it does go right and it does go well and it performs well, and I love it, and that's why we keep doing it. So I would say, even though we do focus a lot on don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, like we still do it for a reason.
It's profitable and it's fun. Yeah, 100%.
I'm staying educated and diligent about it too, right? So when times are down, you can either go out and keep chasing deals, or you can really focus on your systems and your foundation and really shore it up. That's the time. I mean, we all had times where we've had volume that was just crazy town and you could barely get by. And there's no way to just systematize and do things then, get things in order. But this is a good time to do that, right? There's a question back here.
Well, yeah, I'm a borrower. I'm not a lender. I've done a bunch of deals with private lenders and stuff, and I just want to give my opinion. I think I'm the only borrower here. A lot of people want to lend, but I would say that it's a relationship. I mean, it's more than how much you have at the bank, what is your credit score, what is this, what is that. I mean, it's a relationship between two people. I mean, it's not like if you don't have this amount of money in the bank, I will not lend you. Or if you don't have this credit score, I will not lend you. Or if you don't have this equity. I mean, it's a relationship. I mean, me as a flipper, I've done a bunch of deals, and sometimes I get creative. I mean, I say, I need this money. Well, William, you broke this money. Yeah, I'm broke. But what about if I give you a second position in this $300,000 home that I only own 100? Oh, I'll do better. Oh, yeah, I'll do better. But, so you just have to find a solution, find a situation that will help everybody. So sometimes you may be not in the right position to do something, but you can offer something that is better than cash. What is better than $50,000 in the bank, that a second position in a $300,000 property that you only own 1/5. Say, I just did it for 6 months. I'm in a base right now, so that worked for you. Oh yeah, that worked for me because it's more security than having the money on the bank. And I'm old school, right? That's the reason that I come to all these events, to meet people. And I mean, back then, Zoom or whatever phone call, I'm not too crazy about. But when you meet people in person and talk to them and you see, hey, what you're looking for, what I have, what I don't have, or how we can help each other. I would say that the relationship to me is more important than all the analyticals on the PA, in my opinion.
Great feedback. Thank you. Then I'll pick on you. What you said you were trying to scale. So what's your biggest issue right now?
Yeah, so I just opened my doors for loans 4 or 5 months ago. Been working on building my business out, but I had that and that as coaches and been tremendously helpful. And now they took the stairs so I could take the elevator and some class to get to where I am. And so I did my first loan a couple months ago, and I would just say I'm recognizing the balancing act. Like, I reached out to friends and family, raised capital about a year ago, and had a pretty good response, and then quickly realized, oh, I don't have any loans, and I had to figure that side out. And so I'm really filling my borrower pipeline. I'm hitting the ground running on networking PDs. And I was doing that. It was really working. I've been getting a decent 3 to 5 potential loan opportunities coming in every week, and just kind of honing in on viewing out what are those first couple questions I need to ask. I have background in analyzing deals. I used to flip houses, but the borrower underwriting side, I really needed to learn. And so I'm just recognizing, like Michael said, what do you have for liquidity? And that is one of my first questions. You don't have any liquidity or equity built up in your portfolio, it's probably not going to work. So that's like A1. And so I'm just trying to systematize my marketing and getting potential loan opportunities coming into my file outside of just going out to networking meetings and shaking hands, I've been doing some like educational speaking at RIA meetings about private money and everything that I've learned, and attracting borrowers that way, and just educating people and really going at it from the educational perspective. And so I'll just say the balancing act of figuring out systems and getting my borrowers list built up right now. And I recognize pretty quickly I'm going to have to go back to the capital raising side, hopefully, as things scale out. So it's just that balancing act and being efficient as an entrepreneur. You know, every business is competitive, and this is no different. And I have two close friends who go really well, and now more friends in the lending space have done really well themselves over the last 10, 15 years. So I know there's opportunity here, but just recognizing this is a business and we have to be efficient and continue to evolve to just like the K lesson on Japanese kaiten, like 1% improvement every day. Just having self-awareness to recognize where can I be more efficient, how can I be better at serving my borrowers and my investors, and just juggling every ball that comes with the 42 hats that after you weren't owning a business. But to really simplify it, it's like, I need more borrowers and good loan opportunities, and then I will need more capital. That's the one sentence, I guess.
Yeah, it sounds like you're so consciously pursuing it. I mean, sounds fantastic.
Yeah, good for you.
Sounds fantastic.
How have you guys managed the balancing act, Bryce?
I don't. It never goes away. It really doesn't. I mean, I say that kind of tongue in cheek. I mean, it does get better. One thing that I personally feel has helped smooth that out is like never turning off like the marketing engine. So for example, a lot of people are like, oh, I have too much capital. Like I really got to ramp up the borrowers, and vice versa. And a lot of people will momentarily pause one of those pipelines. It's scary to tell a borrower, sorry, I can't help you. But I think it would be helpful if you get comfortable with that, because a lot of people are like, I don't want to turn away a good borrower. And there's other ways you can do. You can broker the deals or different things like that. But even when you feel like you have more of one than the other, don't turn off that pipeline, because it will switch at a moment's notice, and you're like, man, I wish I didn't kill that marketing, whatever I was doing.
We're always frantic. You're like, come on, I don't have enough capital. Crap, I don't have no deals. Yes, like switches. You just feel like Jekyll and Hyde, right?
Yeah, it never goes away.
Never goes away. So how do you remain consistent? Because Devon, you've really taken to your email campaign, right? So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the email has helped me a lot on both sides. So I send out weekly emails to borrowers and potential investors. So that's my way of just staying front of mind constantly, to where when that time comes where they're willing to invest, I come to mind. When that time comes where somebody's looking for a loan, or maybe it's an agent and they're on my borrower email list and they have a client, and now I'm front of mind. So that's helped. And it kind of speaks to what he was saying on like never turning it off. That's my way of never turning it off. I know every potential borrower and investor is going to hear from me at least once a week, no matter what, come hard fail. So that's kind of like my floor. And then it's like, all right, what little things can I do on top of that based on, do I need more capital? Do I need more cash? And then positioning myself as, a true private money where it's all my capital. I kind of like my conversation with borrowers when I'm out of money is like, I don't have it now. I got a couple deals paying off, but you're going to be at the top of my list on somebody I want to work with as soon as I have more capital. So I'll keep that in mind. And then once I get like a payoff statement request from title on a property, I might reach out to that specific borrower. Hey, I do have some capital freeing up. If you're still interested in a loan, you're at the top of my list of people I want to work with. So I kind of make it like a hot commodity, like, hey, my money coming and going. I got other people who want it, but I do want to work with you. So, you're at the top of my list. And I feel like that's been working, because they're like, oh, I got a deal coming in the next 2 weeks. Can you hold that money for me? I've had borrowers and I'm like, if it's 2 months out, no. But if it's, a week or two out, I really want to work with you. Sure. Yeah, let's go.
And Devon uses the marketing VA, right? So he says that it's not reliant on you. I think that's the thing about managing that balance, is you do have to bring in other resources, whether that's AI. I mean, Claude is really excellent at content marketing, I think. And actually some people who use a mix of ChatGPT and Claude. So you build it in ChatGPT and then you throw it into Claude and you say, make this better. I mean, it could be just as simple as that, but you can use AI tools or a VA to help you.
I'm systems and SOPs overboard because I forget things. So like so if any of you guys are lenders and you kind of like, if it's something within my business, I have some type of SOP or structure that I do because I'm forgetful, and I use a loan software system so I don't forget things. But then also the people that I can hire, I can get cheaper labor because it's like, here's the checklist, do this, and then I sign off and double check. So I'm willing to talk to anyone, after this on like different, even for marketing, like on Monday, I create the email list. I send it to my marketing person. They put it in the tent. Like, I have a step-by-step system on how I do everything. So it's kind of just plug and play. So once a month, I'll go back and I'll have my VA look at my open rates on everything and make sure it's just as good, if not better. And then I'm trying to think of ways to improve it and stuff like that. My open rate hovers at 50% on my borrower list and about 35% on my investor list.
Ooh, that's amazing.
What do you use? MailChimp?
Right now, I use Wix for mine, but I'm actually looking at more of a detailed CRM because I want to be able to section off my borrowers. Like, remember I was mentioning my A list, B list, and C list borrowers? That's on my whiteboard in my office right now. I don't have that. Like, Wix doesn't have like segmented, like where you can really like, and classify. That's like my next thing. Probably by the end of the year, I want to have a CRM system where I can be like my A list, B list, and then investors that I already have already raised money from versus warm leads versus cold leads. So
You would actually send the A list a different email than
well, that they'll be the ones that really get my I got money, who needs it email first. And then I could trickle down to the B list or C list. And then
you probably getting into the inbox as opposed to the spam box.
I did it. I was sending it. My email list comes from my actual email and it's connected to the website and all that. So we're off the gate. Like, there are certain things you can look for to make sure it's going to the actual email list. And there's different sites you can check to make sure, like, if your open rate is just awful, then that's when you need to look into. But I've leveraged ChatGPT. Like, my open rate is decreasing. What's going on? And I had to change my email list because my investor one, the one that's at like 35 right now, I had too many links and it was looking too corporate-y. Like, it was like big logos and a bunch of different links. And I guess that signals spam. So I've had to like bring it down to the bare bones, and it almost just looks like an email with.
You can also do like a reply with interested, and if they're email you back.
That's really good. Yeah.
We have a question over here.
Michael, how do you handle the balancing act of capital investors and do this?
It's all, I mean, like you guys say, it's always the case. So I have emails that I send out to my investors, and I love it when they write me back and say, that was so helpful. Because I try to make it really personal. I tell them stories. I tell them, I talk about due diligence, about different aspects. So I do that. And then for my borrowers, when I have money, I mean, I have a finite set of borrowers. I just call them. Say, hey, I've got a lot of cash. We got a lot of cash. I have a good deal. I mean, or really what I do is I ask them how the deal is going, because I'm doing that anyway. And I say, hey, do you have anything else that's going up? So I think I've been thinking about the idea of having a borrower email, but my problem has been more that I have too many borrowers than I have cash. I mean, I have both always.
Instead of an email list, Matt and I, we take all the those closed from the previous month, and he calls down on every single one of them and asks them how their service was, asks them for a review.
No wonder he's on the phone all the time.
But as soon as the loan pays off, we do the same thing. Hey, I noticed you requested a payoff. Congratulations on your project completed. What's next?
You ever thought about that?
That's right. You can do things that are a little more individualized. You don't have to create 10 years. I've never had an email list or a phone. I still don't have a CRM. I have some experience with some customer relationship management systems, but my sales staff could never pick it up. Sales staff hate CRMs, but they can be useful in helping queue up who to call. But we just take it from our loan origination software and say, okay, these guys close loans, we're going to call up. And they love hearing from the key decision maker, right? It's you. You're the namesake of your business in most cases. And then we call down on anyone who pays off a loan, because that's the way to get the best leads. A few other things that we've done early on were to partner with people locally in our community, the real estate community, whether it's another hard money lender, and we post mobile office hours. And we just go buy donuts at the local coffee shop and say, hey, we've got this semi-private room. If anyone's interested, we're meeting up with this local brokerage, and we'll talk all things real estate, private money lending, hard money loans, flipping, whatever you want. Like, so whoever you're partnering with, just cull together all that expertise, and then people would just show up, right? And so you're staying active in the business, or we partner up and do it at their brokerage, and we bring in soft drinks and donuts. On the investor side, and we did it regularly. Once every 2 months, we would have some sort of, we call it pop-up office hours. And investors love to network, right? So it was a great way for us to stay out there and connected and to meet potential borrowers. The other thing that we did was had an annual investor party. So those that did choose to invest with us, we would bring them in, and people who we might be courting or we might thought would be good to hear a little bit about us, not from us directly, but from our actual investors who do business with us. We'd bring them all into the same room. We'd have like a luncheon, and have prospects and existing investors in the same room. And again, they got to hear from the horse's mouth what it's like to do business with that. And so it was a great way. Started out as a luncheon, and then it turned into an annual investor party that is fairly large in size and a little bit fancy, and would give gifts. During COVID, or if you handle investors that are not local to you, during COVID, we did a Zoom party, and we set them all a box that had bingo cards and a dauber, and we did a report out, on our previous year's performance. But we kept it pretty social, and then we were giving away prizes and did bingo and just kept it lively. Like, had a couple of other curated gift center that we typically do each year. But that was our way to keep staying connected with investors, and they would all, putting in that invite. If you have a friend or a colleague that's interested in learning more about us, please invite them as well and let us know if they want to come. So you can have quarterly events or monthly, annual. It doesn't matter. Whatever you can handle, whatever you can afford. But integrating that into your plan on the investor side is really core. Face-to-face is really important, even in sale.
I went to one of these guys'
Oh, yeah, you did.
investor groups, actually, when Beth had her book signing a number of years ago. And it was just really fun. Everybody's happy, everybody's making money, everybody loves these guys. They show them a bunch of pictures, get a bunch of examples. And
yeah, we put every single deal we funded the previous year. That's a great point. And we would just create a slideshow on loop, and we'd have the picture of the property. We'd say when it closed. We'd say what the interest rate was, what the LTV was, and maybe some tidbit about that. Cross-collateralization, second lien position, business seat capital, whatever it was, we put something on it. And a lot of them would just sit there, we had an open bar, and they'd just sit there. And they'd see every sale. I mean, at this point, we're like, 75 deals, and they're looking at, because they only see the loan they fund. So they love seeing everything else out there. And I put the annualized investor returns, and I'll have an asterisk on there. If it goes to maturity, 8-month loan, this is how much the investor needs on the deal. Which is a brilliant way to be able to just show it up there without shoving in their face a pitch deck or anything like that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, these guys are really chillax, and they have this, well, at least the one that I attended. And they have the screen, it's over on the other side of the room, and people are having dinner over here, and then they have the drinks over here watching the... Yeah, I mean, I've seen other ones, a mutual friend of ours, where it's like, it's a presentation, and it's a good presentation, but it's a different bar.
Property, right? We really want to be mom and pop, friends and family, I think, as our investor capital grew by word of mouth. Everybody in that room knew each other.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult. You have to impress them all. It's like you don't just lose their capital, you lose a seat at the dinner table, as we interact with them socially too. So, I think it's a little expensive up front. I think the first one we did only had 25 people in it, maybe a little less than half of them were actual investors. I even invited my parents and his mom just so they could interact with our family, not because I was trying to sell my stepmom on it. So I was very particular about that, but having our family around and some prospects in there and doing appetizers and drinks and gift bags really went a long way. And, for $5,000, and Beth, we're making 6 figures off of them in a year doing deals with everybody in that room. That's a small price to pay.
Yeah, and these a more mellow-cito way that we did it is we have a big Christmas party with a band and a...
We can do it. All of our investors are always traveling during December. How their investors are always...
Yeah, but they hear about our Christmas parties. I'm kind of not kidding. So we invited, and so they just come in as friends, and they meet our other friends. And some of our other friends are potential investors. Most aren't, honestly. We have a lot more friends that don't like them because they're more fun usually. But so anyway, we invited them all, a number of them, and it was really fun.
Any other tattoos?
It's good. You guys gave me a couple.
Yeah, I like the rings a lot.
My brain's churning. I'm like, yay.
The other thing you mentioned about when someone's paying off and you say, hey, do you have any other deals? Sometimes I treat it like, you have $500,000 that you're paying off. Do you want to use that for something else? Make it like it's their cash that they can use again, as opposed to coming in. It's like, all money's fungible, but I treat it maybe like it's not. Okay, well, you got that $500,000. Where do you want to put it?
Good point, because if you're doing direct private placement, it's not a guarantee that they're going to redeploy that capital with you again, right? Some life events might, or so Matt was really making 2 calls when we did private placement. He would call the borrower and say, congratulations on your project, what you got next going on. He'd also call the investor and say, I think your money's going to be paid off. What kind of deal do you want to do next? And really kind of figure out like, hey, we put $450 in this deal for you. Do you want to place all $450? Do you have more? Come on. And that would be cheeky with them. She's like, come on, I know you got more in there. And they're like, great. The miracle maker always dig up more. It's like, come on, don't be cheap. I know you bought this. Next thing you know, they're ponying up another $100K. But there were some instances where they would say like, no, I'm putting my daughter through school, or we're buying a second home. So I'll give you $300 and I'll deploy that, but I need the rest back. No problem. So it really helps you anticipate whether or not that they're going to redeploy that with you. Gives that a head up, heads up that they're likely going to be paid off. There might be a little bit of lull between what we find for them next, but we can actively start looking for another loan form based on the amount of capital they have to invest off of it.
I've looked up the price of a new Mercedes and the level or whatever it's called, because I knew that my investor was going to give me back, was going to take the money, invest it, but he was going to buy a Mercedes. So I was like, how much is he not going to be invested?
That's when you get the conversation like, I know you can get a loan on that auto.
Also, I got a lot of positive feedback was when loans were being paid off, I'd reach out to him and say, hey, congratulations, I know you got this deal is closing, this is awesome. Based on what we've done here, here's your golden ticket. So, you let me know when you have the next deal, because when you let people know that they have access to funds, they're going to spend it. Right? So them now in the back of their mind say, well, I know Flynn give us about $250,000 or $500,000. They're already now thinking, I said, hell.
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
You're already planting the seed. Hey, we're getting healthy, so let's get on it.
The funny thing is they should know that because we're their private lenders and they know that we're available to them. But it's like you have this cash to remember, get going on the next one, right?
They have a lot of things going on, investors do, right? So I feel like it's private lending and it's a just-in-time service, right? They need to keep hearing that you're there. They need to keep hearing from you, because the moment they have a need, then you will crop up on our mind. If you go dormant or you just expect that they think they know you and have you in their, plugged into their phone as a contact, they may not remember. And they may be just get, torn away by this other teaser rate that they got in direct mail. The other thing I'll throw out there for investors is upon the first closing, we always gave a gift. And in my local market, we have this thing called Blassie Babies, or hand-blown votive holders, which are really popular. It's a Webadone, it's local, and part of it, the proceeds go to nonprofits. So I love that. So we would always curate local small business owned gifts to give to our clients. But every time that and each one of them is named. So no matter if there was an event, like they lost somebody, we'd send them one that's like Angel or Remembrance. There was another one that's called like $1 million. And it was just a glassy baby we'd send to them with a card saying, thank you for entrusting us with your hard-earned money. We look forward to continuing to earn your business. And the one thing about that is that mostly it was men that came to us to invest because they were kind of holding the purse strings and managing the investments. Their wife loved it. And I cannot tell you how many of them were like sending us pictures of it. Like, my wife loves the votive holder. She's so appreciative. And the guy was just appreciative because we just pleased their wife. And so they never would have thought to buy them, right? But that remembrance goes a long ways after they, just pledge their capital with you. Let them know how much you appreciate that too, like you would.
If I may, I think that's a really classy way to do it, as opposed to getting another jug of water with someone else's name on it. That's a great way.
Or a Starbucks car, it's like, as it says, I know you and love you like a Starbucks.
As much as I love my logo, much as I love my logo, I know most people aren't going to want a hat with it, you know? So,
Yeah, most of our gifts, nothing has our logo on it. So, any other questions that you want to pose for the group? Hopefully this was helpful for all of you.
Very good.
yeah, Chris. Great questions too. Thanks, Darius. That's really fun.